Kathy from Homespun Seasonal Living, and we are doing our Cultivate and Nourish interviews again today. And we have Kris Bordessa from Attainable, Sustainable with us. Hi, Kris.
Hi, everybody.
So Kris is going to talk to us a little bit about replacing things we buy from the grocery store by making them from scratch. And she's going to tell us how easy it is, because it seems overwhelming, but it's really not.
It's really not. No. It's some of the stuff that we're so used to buying that we go to the supermarket for. We're used to grabbing it off the shelf because it's there, right? It's a habit. It's some of this stuff. If you think about it, I have to tell you a story. I didn't realize until I was probably close to 30 that you could make pudding that wasn't from a box. Right. So because that's what I knew, that's what my mom made. That's what, that's just how you made pudding. So I was, well into my adulthood before I really realized that was possible. So it's a little bit breaking that habit and understanding, if it's on the shelf, I probably can also make this at home from scratch ingredients.
And then it doesn't necessarily take much more time really than buying it at the grocery store.
I don't think so. If you have the ingredients on hand, especially, can we start by talking about, salad dressing is a big one.
Yes.
And I don't know even when did salad dressing become a thing at the supermarket that you could buy that instead of making it yourself. But, my supermarket has got, 12 feet of salad dressings that you can choose from. And they're really, it's very easy to make that at home. The easiest is probably a, oil and vinegar based vinaigrette. It's super easy, but you can also make the creamy egg based salad dressings right at home. And that goes for mayonnaise too. And that's basically, oil and an egg for the base and then your different seasonings.
Right.
So I had a friend visit a while back, and he told me, he was sitting here and I was making salad for dinner, and I, whipped out my ingredients and I started making my salad dressing, and he said, "Do you make homemade salad dressing every night?" So it's just what I do. It's habit. It's easy I don't even measure anything anymore. It all just goes in the jar, and that's how we do it. So,
right. And when you make your own mayonnaise, so it's eggs and oil and maybe some salt and pepper, most basic, and you do it in a blender or a food processor or by hand? Are you whisking it?
I am not whisking it. Oh my goodness, that I don't think I could do that. I'm more about shortcuts. I actually use an immersion blender for that. The traditional way to do that is in a blender, and you pour the ingredients, the oil in very slowly so that it will emulsify. And I had a reader tell me, this has been years ago now, and she said, the easiest way to do it is with an immersion blender. And I thought, I don't know, that's not, how I've been taught to do this. And I tried it, and it is so easy. It's like 60 seconds. The egg and the oil goes into, I use a wide mouth mason jar, and it goes in there, and you use the immersion blender, and you pulse it, 10 times maybe until it kind of starts to blend a little bit, and then run the immersion blender, and it's done. It's the easiest thing ever. I mean, it's not just me making it. I have boys and a husband, and they both make it themselves too, if they just know how to do it. So super, super easy, and it's something that anybody can do. And those are basic ingredients that we mostly, always have in our household.
Right. And how long does it keep? Everybody's going to want to know that.
Yeah, I know. Everybody's going to want to know that. A week or two, that might be pushing it. We usually go through it. I make a small enough batch that, I make about a cup at a time, and we go through it by then. I don't just, the store-bought stuff that has the preservatives in it that you can leave in your refrigerator forever. It's not that. So, we'll make it like, if my husband wants to make a potato salad, he'll make a potato salad and then make up a batch of mayonnaise for that purpose.
Right. And so, but really, if you're just making a little bit at a time, it will last you just as long as you need, which is really the way to make homemade things anyway, in my opinion, unless you're kidding.
And it's easy enough to do just how much you need now, to me.
Right.
It really doesn't take that much longer. And I don't have to think about picking it up at the store, and I don't have the plastic jar to deal with when I'm done.
Right. Absolutely, because you can just keep reusing your jars.
Yeah.
Those mason jars. There's never. I always I laugh, but it's unfortunately probably true. I have never met a glass jar that I haven't loved. Every time, yard sales, thrift stores, whatever, I'm always like scoping out the jars for something, something that might be a little different or a little unusual, but I really don't. I have enough canning jars for more than us, so I don't know why I feel like I
know. But that's where most of my canning jars came from too, is from thrift stores or garage sales, that huge collection, because you can use them over and over again.
Absolutely. I'm always liking the baling wire jars and all the fancy ones.
Yeah. I think you probably have more of those in the Midwest.
That's probably true.
Than we do here. Yeah.
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 That's great. All right. And so the second thing Kris was going to talk to us about was sour cream, which I will admit I have not ever made. I will also say that I don't eat very much of it in general, but do tell us all about her making sour cream.
Okay. So this is like my really the newest thing that we've adopted at my house. And I mean, admittedly, my family thinks I'm a little bit crazy sometimes, but we use a lot of sour cream. We eat a lot of Mexican food, and the Mexican food always has to have a dollop of sour cream on it. And we were going through, containers of sour cream just regularly. And I have all of these containers. And one of my things is I'm trying to cut back on plastic. Mm-hmm. So, I started doing some research, and I have 2 recipes actually on my website at the moment that are, one is a sour cream recipe, one is creme fraiche. Right. And the creme fraiche is one that actually my family prefers. It's a little bit more like the store-bought sour cream that they're used to. It's 2 ingredients. It's heavy cream, and depending on whether you use the sour cream or the creme fraiche recipe, it's either buttermilk, cultured buttermilk, or lemon juice. 2 ingredients. So my husband, who, I don't mean to make him sound like he's not capable, because he's very capable. He's actually quite a baker. But he's been making sour cream and making sure that we have it in our house all the time when we need it.
Nice.
2 ingredients, you mix them together, you let it sit on the counter overnight, and boom, it's thickened and ready to use.
Wow. Very nice. Yeah. Now, I'm going to ask, this is out of left field, so you can hate me for it. I should ask ahead of time. Do you think it could be done with goat milk? See, because cow's milk and I don't get along very well, which is why I don't do a lot of sour cream.
I haven't tried it.
I haven't tried it. And I'll let you know.
Yeah, I haven't tried it with goat milk, but I can't imagine why it wouldn't.
See, the only thing is goat milk isn't heavy cream, right? It's naturally homogenized.
You can't actually say, okay, you're talking not the heavy cream, you're talking the actual milk.
Yeah, because you can't, to my knowledge, you can't buy heavy cream.
I don't know, but you could certainly take have the recipe so that you weren't wasting a lot of it and see.
Yeah.
Report back.
Yeah. I will let you know. I'm going to give it a try because cow's milk and I don't get along very well. So I do goat milk, and I have made yogurt, like yogurt cheese, from goat milk. And I will use that kind of as my sour cream on something, but not everyone likes it. So
yeah. See, we don't have access to goat's milk here very readily. So that's just not something,
you would try, right? Plus, if you don't need it, goat milk tends to be more expensive. If you don't need it, why?
Right.
I drink it.
Yeah.
So next, Kris was going to talk to us about making mustard, and this is something I have done, and it is a ton of fun. So give us the lowdown on mustard.
Yeah, I wanted to talk today about some of the very easiest replacements that people can make, because we don't want to start with something that's really difficult. I think it's super important that we start with things that are easy, and we can embrace that. So mustard is one. I've been making my own mustard for years and years and years. And when I share the recipe with my readers, it almost always somebody comes back and says, I had no idea, number one, that you could make your own mustard, and number 2, that it was so easy. So the very basic mustard recipe is basically mustard seeds and vinegar. And you do use some water with that. If you use straight vinegar, it gets pretty strong. But that's it. And you soak the mustard seeds overnight, at least overnight. I have actually left them on my counter for like a week because things just got crazy and I never got back to it. They're totally fine. It didn't cause any problem. and then you blend it up, and that's the basics of it. Spicy, grainy mustard, and you can experiment with it. This, Kathy. You can add a little bit of ale if you like, or white wine, or seasonings, or any variety of things to dress it up. And it's actually a great gift to give to people if different flavors of mustard, spicy mustard. And you can do it with a variety of mustard seeds. You can use the brown mustard or the yellow mustard or a mix, or what have you. But it's fun. It's fun to do that.
And where do you find your mustard seeds?
We have a great little tea shop / herb store in town where they have a lot of bulk herbs that I can go in and buy. I've also gotten them at my natural food store. They also have them in bulk. And I have found
I live in a small town, right? I live in a town of 5,000 people. I mean, in a larger county, but I still find that mustard seeds in and of themselves tend to be a little more difficult. I do find them at the natural food stores, the health food store, because they tend to sell them in bulk. But otherwise, like at the regular grocery store, you got to buy like the little.
No,
it costs a fortune, so nobody do that.
yeah. I don't recommend that. I get them in bulk, and I know that if you can't get them locally, you can check Frontier Herbs. Right. They sell them in bulk, and if it's something that you're thinking about doing, I think they sell them in 1 pound bags. Mm-hmm. They're more than most people probably buy at a time.
Right.
But yeah, you can order that from them online, and then you'll have plenty for to last you for a while. Probably last you for a couple of years, depending on how much mustard a person eats.
Right. But we are going to talk next about baking bread from scratch, which I love. And so I'm a big fan of giving people loaves of bread with something else, right? Like so homemade. So definitely make the mustard and give somebody a loaf of homemade bread. So
a loaf of homemade bread, yeah. And then you have to learn how to make something like homemade salami or something too, so that it could be like a sandwich kit.
Although, I'm like a big fan of, so one of the things on my blog, I have a recipe for cranberry honey mustard. So you use fresh cranberries with the mustard and you grind it all up, which is, excellent on turkey salad. So like it's the perfect thing to take if you're going somewhere for Thanksgiving. Like your little hostess gift. Here's for the leftovers.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah. So bread baking. Everybody's baking bread, right?
Yeah.
And bread is, I think for people who have never made bread, it can be kind of scary. Oh my gosh, how do you make bread? When I show up places, one of my favorite things to take when I go to potlucks is fresh focaccia bread.
Yeah.
And I take it because it's inexpensive to make for a crowd. And to me, it's easy. It's just a few ingredients and it comes together very easily. But when I show up with it, people just, you made this? I didn't know you could make this, or like it just sounds. It sounds impressive, but it's truly so easy. So with baking bread, I think there's 2 things, 3 different things to consider as far as the types of bread that people can bake. Most people are familiar with a quick bread, which is, even like a banana bread, something that uses baking soda or baking powder to give you that rise. And you can make savory ones too. In fact, I have
Irish soda bread.
Okay, right.
Irish soda is probably the most common savory one, I think.
Yeah. So that's, that's something that if people want to start making a little bit of their own bread, even like a sandwich bread, I have a recipe for a honey oat bread in my book. That's I can't remember right now if it's baking powder or baking soda, but it's a quick bread that's good for making sandwiches and stuff. So you don't actually have to delve in to that yeast bread making. So there's that. That's easy. Basically it's mix up your batter and bake it in a loaf pan. Then there's the yeast bread, which does require a little bit more time. I don't necessarily want to say effort, especially these days if people do have a stand mixer that can do the kneading for them. That it's really not that difficult. If you don't have a stand mixer, you will have to do a little bit of hand kneading unless you use a no knead recipe. But that takes a little bit more time investment because you have to let that dough rise.
Right.
The no knead bread, my husband has been making a loaf. I don't eat wheat, so he's been making it and eating it himself. He's been making a loaf of no knead bread every week, and it's super easy. It's just blend up the ingredients with yeast and let it sit overnight, and then he bakes it. So it's I don't know, I think it's 5 ingredients and very easy to make. And then there's sourdough.
Right.
You know, that does require that you have and maintain that active sourdough starter. So those, you know, those are the 3 kinds of breads that people can be making at home, and, you know, not buying that yucky sandwich bread.
Right, because it is, and there's nothing better than homemade bread.
No. The problem with homemade bread, though, is that you end up eating 3 times as much bread as you might otherwise if you were eating just a sandwich loaf, right?
That's probably true. That is probably true. The other thing too, and this is something, this is not an original thought. I actually heard this by Nigella.
That's all right.
Last name. I can't remember her last name now. She's Nigella. She's the cook. She has a famous, you know, cooking show, English woman. But I heard her say one time she was making egg noodles, and she said, I think we need to stop thinking that time consuming equals difficult. And that's bread, in my opinion. It is time consuming, but it is not really difficult. It does definitely take a little practice, but it's not necessarily difficult. And the other thing to remember about bread is that rising time is not hands-on time. You're doing nothing.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is you're not working it. You just have to kind of like figure that into your day, so that you need to watch it. And you're right about it, especially with yeast bread. It's a matter of learning what it should look like. Right. You know, it's not hard. Right. But the first time you make it, you might not realize that you didn't knead it quite enough, or, you know, that you know what to look for. And as you make more of it, it just becomes really kind of second nature, that you know, oh, this is a done loaf. It looks good right now.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. And you do, okay, as someone who makes a lot of bread, because I love it, and I like to, and I enjoy the act of making bread, that you really can figure it out. And I often make bread on Sundays. This is for everybody else. I often make a couple of loaves on Sundays. And what I do is I cook it, and then I slice it, and I freeze it, so that we can just pull out a couple of slices when we need them, because we're just a household of 2, so we don't go through tons of it. Right. But what I often do is I start the bread, and then I go for a run. So because I can fit in probably a 5-mile run in a 1 hour, which is how long the first rise is generally. And then I come back and I can punch it down and shape it into loaves and hop in the shower. So it's really like you can fit it into everyday life.
Of course. Yeah. It's just a matter of figuring out, you know, when to do that. And with just as an example, the no knead loaf too, right. You know, we've figured out that if my husband does that in the morning, then he's baking at night, or he can do it at night and let it sit overnight, and then he's baking first thing in the morning. So, you know, you probably don't want to, you know, if you've got a 12-hour rise, you probably don't want to start it at noon, because then you're going to be up at midnight baking, right?
Right.
So it's just a matter of figuring it out.
It's just kind of a matter of planning. It's totally doable, no matter how busy you are. And I'm of the opinion that making bread is kind of a rebellious act. Now, I know it's kind of popular right now because of the whole pandemic thing, and I'm not belittling that, but I do feel like to some extent we all feel like, oh, like in fact, all this homemade stuff is actually a little bit rebellious, in that we're going to say, okay, I don't need to buy that. I really can just do it by myself. I really can just do it by hand.
And it's not just can, but I am doing it. Right. You know, I have figured out, I've learned how to do it, and I'm embracing that. And, you know, like you say, I think a lot of people are making bread right now, but I'm hoping that a good percentage of them will continue and realize, wow, how many people actually have ever made homemade bread up until now, or had homemade bread.
Right.
You know, it's a whole new generation of people who maybe haven't even had a chance to have, you know, a loaf of homemade bread fresh out of the oven. So I'm hoping that people will continue and stick with that.
All right. And we're going to talk about the last thing today. We're going to talk about making your own homemade broth, which is, again, sometimes time consuming, but one of the easiest things that we have talked about.
I don't know. I can't say it's the easiest thing, because except for the bread, these other things have been pretty easy. Yeah. But broth it's like free food. If you're a meat eater, and even if you're not a meat eater, you can do vegetable broth. But that roasted chicken, even if you're buying Costco roasted chicken, because not everybody roasts their own chicken, but those bones can be turned into a delicious broth that can be either just, to drink a cupful because it's good for you, or as a base for soup, making your homemade soup. my mom would, I mean, she would never throw away bones. And so that's how I grew up, that, you know, you don't throw away, whether it's a chicken, roasted chicken, same thing with beef,
Mm-hmm.
you know, all of I learned, you know, I guess kind of later in life, that instead of serving that T-bone steak or whatever it is on a plate, if you can cut the bone out before you serve the meat, then you have a bone that hasn't been on somebody's plate that can then be tossed into the homemade broth.
Right.
And it's super simple. I mean, for me, I do it in my crock pot. I fill the crock pot with the bones. If I've got, you know, ends of carrots or pieces of onion, it's kind of a chance to clean out your produce drawer and throw stuff in there too. If I don't have enough bones to fill the crock pot, if it's just a small little bit, I will freeze those. Mm-hmm. And then when I have enough in the freezer, I'll make a batch. But basically, you're just covering all those bones and vegetables with water, and free water, or mostly free. I guess we pay a little bit for our, you know,
depending on where we live, right?
City water or a power, but it's mostly free. You fill that and you know, let it cook on low for, you know, 24, 48 hours.
Right.
Yeah. And then for me, either I'll use it right away to make a soup, I'll freeze it, or I will pressure can it, so that if you want to have it be shelf stable, you can pressure can it, and then it can just be in your pantry and be ready like the boxes. And that, you know, that does entail a little bit more work. It's, you know, the easiest way is to freeze it, but you know, sometimes it's more convenient to have a ready to go jar of broth instead of having to remember to thaw it out.
I tend to pressure can mine just because it's easier, and I do it, you know, for me and my freezer space, it's easier. The other thing is, for people who maybe like I do, because we try to support our local farmers as much as possible, we tend to buy large amounts of beef and pork, for that matter, and chickens. I often buy like an entire case of whole chickens. And then I buy half a cow, because there's only 2 of us. Right. So, and I tell them when they're butchering it, I want all the bones.
Right.
So if you're buying that kind of meat, they tend to not give it to you, because
most people don't want that.
But you're paying for it.
Yeah.
So get it and then use it for making soup.
Right. That's a good tip. Yeah, that's a good tip. I don't have access to, well, I shouldn't say I don't have access to, I could probably find it. We don't do that. When I was growing up, my folks used to do the half a cow and keep it in the freezer. It's not something that we have done here so much, that we do have wild boar. Oh, yeah. That's our thing right now. And I've been making pork broth out of the bones for that. So, you know, it's free food. Don't throw it away, you know?
And I know my grandmother always made, whenever she made a split pea soup, which I will admit is not my favorite, but
does anybody like?
Whenever she made it, she always put a ham bone in there. Like there was always bone in the freezer, because that's what went into her split pea soup. So, and I do make ham bone broth because I like ham and bean soup. I'm just not
right, with the white beans.
Yeah.
See, that's much better than the pea soup.
I like lentil soup, but not split pea, and they're the same thing, really.
No, they're not.
I can't. I'm so glad that you're with me on this, because I've just never liked, and I have to be honest, I never liked even the way it would smell. I don't know.
Yeah, you know, I eat a lot of, you know, I'll eat pretty much anything. I eat a lot of soup. I eat a lot of dry beans. I just cannot do the pea soup. That's just doesn't happen around here.
Yeah, I never make it, and my husband does like it, but he'll eat it if we go out somewhere and they happen to have it. But
that's funny. Yeah, I guess somewhere out there's somebody who likes pea soup.
Yeah,
there must be.
Yeah, my husband, and I know there's other people. My dad likes it. I mean, he'll talk fondly of my grandmother's split pea soup, but
that's funny. Yeah. But yeah, a ham bone is going to flavor that, you know, and I use a ham bone for, or ham hocks for. Like navy bean soup, white bean soup.
Right.
So
absolutely. So,
but it's, you know, this whole idea of cooking at home and making some of these things that we're used to buying packaged and ready to go, you know, you people can do this. People can do this. And I mean, the biggest thing that I want people to take away is that they can do it, and that they should do it one at a time. Don't go out there to the supermarket and buy your mustard seeds and your heavy cream and the oil to make mayonnaise, and think that you're going to do that all this week. Pick one, find one that speaks to you and that you'll use in your household, and start doing that to replace the store bought. And pretty soon that will become a habit, and you can try something new. Trying to tackle it all at once is just crazy making.
Right. Absolutely. And you will find, it's like, and I always tell people this when I teach canning classes, that the more you do something, the more efficient you become, right? The first time you do it, it's not efficient. You make a giant mess in the kitchen, whatever. But the more you do it, the more efficient you become. And then it does get to the point where it is so easy that it's easy to add something else.
And to me, it's the idea of learning something new, that even though it ends up not being difficult, it's just the idea of, I don't know what this should look like. I don't know. I've never done this before. I mean, for me, when I started fermenting, that's the way it was. I never fermented, and I put it off because I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have that background. It's not something my mom ever did.
Right.
But then when I finally did it, I thought, oh my gosh, Kris, this was just, this is so easy. Why have you not been doing this all along? But it's that idea of starting something different that kind of, I don't know, it's kind of hard to get over, I guess.
Right. And then, the other thing is, I've been doing a lot of kind of cooking from scratch probably my whole life. I mean, my grandmother and my dad did. And so, I mean, I do things a lot differently than they did. It was a whole lot of white flour and white sugar. Yeah. And I'm doing a lot more whole grain and different things. But I am still proud to this day when I pull a beautiful loaf of bread out of the oven. Like, I never get tired of that. I never am never like, oh, I wish I hadn't canned that jam today. I'm always proud of it. And I hope that whoever's watching this will feel the same way. Like, always be proud of what you've done.
Right. And I think that's so true. You've put yourself into it, and you've put your time and effort into doing that. And you should be proud of that effort, whether it's a simple home cooked meal, mm-hmm. Or a loaf of bread, or a jar of strawberry jam, whatever it is you're making. You've put the effort into making that. You've made it with some wholesome ingredients, and you're going to have that to give away to friends and family or feed your family. But yeah, it's a good feeling to know that you're creating this good, wholesome food for people.
And we should let everyone know that Kris has an amazing new book called Attainable, Sustainable that is out. And you can find lots of details about making all of this and so much more in the book.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes. There's a whole section on, whole food section called, ironically, Eat. And that includes some of the pantry recipes that we talked about, as well as others. And a lot of things on my website too. And I know you've got some different ones on your website too.
And we will include links to all of these things in the notes from this. And so, Kris, but before we part, tell everybody where we can find you.
I'm at attainablesustainable.net, not .com, which kind of tends to confuse people. And yeah, I actually have just started something new, Kathy. Mm-hmm. I've added a forum to my site.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm experimenting with it to see if it's something that people will appreciate and have that opportunity to talk with other people, not just me, but everybody on the forum, and ask questions and such. So that is, I don't know the URL for that off the top of my head, but if you go to my website, it's linked at the top. It just says forum there, and you can join that and participate there. I have a newsletter people can sign up for, and then the book is available anywhere that books are sold.
And I'll make sure to include links to the book and the forum and her website and everything else we talked about today. So thank you so very much, Kris.
Thank you.
Thanks.